I'm so tired of people saying that it's just a movie, it's just a comic book, it's just a TV show. No, it's not. Stories are the building blocks of our culture, of ourselves, even of our own psychology. We are a product of the stories we tell ourselves about our own past and the experiences on a daily basis, but also the stories that we choose to spend time with. What types of values, our feelings, or whatever are they promoting? What types that we like to spend our time around? They're going to shape us. They're going to shape our personality and character, and they're going to shape our perception of the world and the acts and behaviors that we put out into the world. And people don't understand that. They go, it's just a movie. It's just this. I can like and promote whatever I want. Well, of course you can, but you should pay attention to the responsibility that you have.
Consume stories responsibly.
As a member of society, as a human being, responsibility to yourself.
Consider the consequences.
You need some balance. You need some certain criteria that is going to make sure you're promoting the right kind of works, or at least have thought through the type of work that this or that story is going to do in our culture, and then make your own decision whether or not that's something you want to support.
Consume stories responsibly. Consider the consequences. Consume stories responsibly.
Hello everyone, I'm Professor Geek. Welcome back to the channel, and welcome to another office hours stream. This is a weird night coming to you on a Monday. I know that a lot of people in the chat were like, Monday, what happened? I'll explain that in a second. First of all, apologies for my voice. I mowed the lawn today, and I don't know what it is. It just hit my allergies really hard. It's always, been a little bit of messed up, but it really hit allergies hard this time. I've just, I can hear the difference in my voice, feel kind of congested and stuff from it, but it's just allergies. So it'll go away. But anyway, if I sound different, that's why. But yeah, welcome to Ghost Planet Max Inc. 1.1, no point now, just 10. Always tweaking that name. Nathaniel's Lowsball, Slav, good to see you. The Chuck Jones channel. Darth Enigma, my dear sound engraver. Was it 26 days, I think, now, my love, until we are man and wife? Owen Lister, good to see you. Jackhammer, great to see you there. Comic Skater, I haven't seen you around a while, Comic Skater. Good to see you. More people here. I'll stop, but Omega, Studio Super, more and more. So yeah, Monday night, I was hoping to do a stream Saturday night like I usually do. I mentioned, if you caught the Friday night book study, that I was going to try to do a stream Saturday night, but I did have my daughter that night, and it was just, I was exhausted. So much going on with the wedding planning, and just trying to, get the house ready too, as well as planning and whatnot. It is crazy busy, on top of teaching and taking care of Alyssa and, doing all the wedding prep that, Sound Engraver and I have to do. So it just didn't happen Monday or Saturday, but I wanted to get one in because it's actually not going to be able, I won't be able to do a live stream this coming Saturday. We're going to, Fan Man and Big Al and I are going to do our kind of little virtual bachelor party. We're just going to get together via, online and watch some movies and stuff like that. And I think we're going to do some Hammer horror films, and just hang out, for a little virtual bachelor party, anyway. But we're doing that Saturday, so I won't be able to do a live stream on Saturday. I will come back for the last Dawn of the Jedi book study. That'll be this Friday, and we'll finish up the book. And I'll try to get in an office hour stream next week, maybe Monday night again. We'll see how it goes. That might be the thing. But I'd like to get these streams in. I do still plan to cut out a video from my last live stream talking about Dave Filoni and the writing and stuff. People seem to really respond to that quite well. So let me check in the chat here before I start into the topic. Yeah, Jackhammer said, one sad thing about Superman versus the Elite is that if it were made today, people would side with the Elite while calling Superman too forgiving. Well, you cannot support Zack Snyder's vision of Superman and understand and support Superman versus the Elite and that whole message, because his was antithetical to that, definitely. Yeah, it happens every so often, that kind of view. That quote that I usually put up, Tulpa Superman has to reassert himself every now and then. So in the thumbnail here, I had It took me a while to figure out how to do that thumbnail. At first, I was looking for some fashions from each decade or whatever, but you got the 80s, or excuse me, I had the 60s, I think. It started with that. The 70s and its font, its own, typical font. 80s looking very 80s, 90s looking very 90s. And then I had the 2000s, the 2010s, and the 2020s just all uniform. And I think that's a good visual representation of what I'm talking about tonight. And then I have underneath it, I had a headstone that said "Rest in peace, culture," because that's really what we've been seeing over the last 30 years or so. I talk a lot on my channel about the issue of people, recklessly consuming stories and just not being able to help themselves. They just need to consume. They just have to have the newest thing, whether they're trying to convince themselves they're excited for it, or whether they're just hate watching it, or just going it just so they'll know what it is, and then they can run to their favorite YouTubers and hear them rip it a new one, and all this kind of stuff. And I've said before that people today, a lot of these fans aren't really fans of the content. There very few of them are actual fans of Star Wars. They just want community. And that's the way I've contextualized it. And it's true that they just want that community. It needs to be the newest thing because the newest thing has the current hashtags and has the YouTubers talking about it and everything. Even deeper than that, though, they want community, and they do, but it's because they're craving culture. And we are craving culture today in our society in a way that we've never craved it before because we have such a deficit of culture. Now, what do I mean by culture? I'm not trying to be like a snob and saying, oh, sophisticated culture, be cultured or anything like that. No, I'm talking about a shared culture. One of the things I talk about on my channel is the importance and the work of mythology. And especially even today, ever since we started being a society without one shared religion, in the extent that we all believe in the same stories and narratives around that religion, ever since we became a society of different religions or lack thereof, we've always needed a shared set of stories to better hand down our culture, to hand down our values, to hand down our society's taboos and norms and the things that we should aspire to. And that's taken place in popular fiction. That's what's taken the role of that. That's why you have, not everybody reads Star Wars. That's fine, or watches Star Wars, but you've had different popular fictions, different, whether it's comic books, heroes definitely have fulfilled that role, but popular fictions elsewhere, Harry Potter, back in the day, Wizard of Oz, just anything that would come out in culture and would be sort of a big cultural event. You used to see films hung around for a while. If a big blockbuster movie was coming out for a summer, that whole summer was about that movie. Gearing up to it with the marketing, the excitement, the buzz, and long after it was out, people are still talking about it. They're going to re-see it. It's the buzz, the marketing out there. It's everywhere. And we saw this, famously with the Batmania of the 89, but not just that. I mean, Ghostbusters, all these movies in the 80s and 90s. I'm just speaking from like my lifespan, things that I can remember. And I think we saw it right up to, I don't know, Marvel's The Avengers is kind of the last movie, and that was 2012. That was kind of the last movie that I can think of that still really had its cultural moment. You might say, well, Infinity War, Endgame, or something like that. That was more about curiosity. It wasn't really people celebrating a film and something new that it gave us. And that's the thing. Whether it was a movie or an album, from a band or a television show or whatever, it had its cultural moment, and it had a moment, and it had time to breathe. And you would actually have like a whole season, of people buzzing about this one thing. And it was something for the society to gather around. Not every single member of society would gather around, a single movie, but enough of society gathered around this movie, or enough of society gathered around this popular album, or enough of society gathered around this popular fad or whatever, so that we had cohesion as a society and culture was able to build and grow. You didn't have to jump to the next film right away. You didn't have to jump to the next TV, you didn't have to just binge watch it real quick and jump to the next thing right away, because culture had time to grow organically. The stories were of a higher quality, and it had time to really grow take its place, really seed out its tendrils into society and do the work of mythology. It doesn't have that ability to anymore. Now, in the thumbnail, I talked about, in the thumbnail I listed as the 2010s and the 20s all being sort of symmetrical there, but we can be more specific than that. I think the aughts, for example, had a lot of culture, especially the start of the aughts, like early aughts. I think we had a lot of good culture. I think it wasn't until probably 2007 with the invention of the iPhone that we saw the beginning of the end. But even after that, like I said, I mean, I just mentioned Marvel's The Avengers, which was 2012, and you still had some good Marvel movies here and there, but we see that it's slowly dying off to the point that it is now. And let me give you some examples of why it's of what I'm talking about, and then I'll talk more about why it is. If you took a person from the 90s and dropped them back into the 80s, you could maybe find some exceptions to this. You could find like one specific outfit, that would work for 80s and 90s or whatever. You could find exceptions, of course. But you take your general like alternative, Nirvana, Pearl Jam fan or whatever from the 90s and go drop them into the 80s, it'll be a real culture shock for them. The style of dress would be radically different for them. The style of music would be radically different for them, for the most part. It's 10 years, so of course you're going to find holdovers and things that are still working. But for the most part, you'd still see a real radical change. You can see a radical change in the types of movies that were in the theater from the 80s and 10 years later into the 90s, a real change in the kind of cultural films and stuff like that. But one thing that you wouldn't see much change is technology. In just 10 years, you wouldn't see all that much of a change in technology. Now, there was change, of course, right? In the 80s, we started with dial-up internet, and that was a huge deal, and we started to really streamline. Everybody had a cell phone, at that point, more of the Nokias or clamshells or whatever. But it still wasn't that. It wasn't like a overwhelming, wow. I remember studying early, doing my Survey American Lit classes in my undergrad, because I focused on American literature. And people talking about the generation, that sort of fin de siècle generation coming from the 1800s into the 1900s. And you had people born being children riding in horse carriages. And yet at the time that they died, they were able to go take a ride in an airplane. And we, I remember just studying about how that was incredible. That was just like, we've never had that quickly of a technological advancement in the history of the world. But we're talking about the space of a lifetime there. Now we're talking about the space of, 10 years or less at this point. Once the iPhone came out, and I'm not like mad or poo-pooing technology. No, I think technology is great, but it's part of the reason why we've lost culture, because of the way technology is being used and utilized in culture. If you now take somebody from 2018 and drop them into 2008, there'd be no culture shock. There'd be no the music, pretty much the same. The style, the fashion, pretty much the same. The way of speaking, all of that. The movies that were coming out were still pretty much the same, same style, from 2008 to 2018. Even, take somebody from today to 2023 and drop them into 2013. Not that much of a change. Technologically, though, there was a big change. So it's the reverse. It used to be that you could go back in time 10 years and it would be a vast cultural shock, cultural difference. But the technology wouldn't have changed all that much. Now it's to the point where if you go back 10 years, there's really no cultural shock at all. Culture has kind of stagnated, but technology has changed a great deal. Think about the types of video games people were playing 10 years ago or 2002 compared to 2012, that's like PS2 into PS4 era almost, it's a big deal. So what is the correlation here? When culture changes, technology doesn't change all that much, or when culture takes hold, technology doesn't change that much. But when you have technology rapidly changing, culture doesn't really change. If anything, you lose culture. And again, when I say culture, I'm talking about styles of dress, the music people are listening to, the styles and themes of movies, that people are watching, the shared cultural moments. We just don't have those anymore. We don't have those anymore because technology doesn't give anything space to breathe. you think about, when a season of a television show hit, it had to last that whole season, and people were buzzing about it and watching it every week. Now, for a long time, they would just release a whole season straight up on a streaming platform. Now, even though they are sort of releasing some series kind of week to week, they're still far shorter. It's not, you don't have 24 episodes, so a whole long season event to follow anymore. It's much shorter. Everything's much condensed. People binge watch now. And when they binge watch, they don't celebrate the show. They don't like live with the show for a while. It's just on to the next one. Maybe have a few moments or a couple days of looking up YouTube videos about it, but then you're on to the next one. I mean, theoretically, you could binge watch a show in the 90s and the aughts, but you'd have to go buy like the box set. I kind of did that when I was catching up with Stargate SG-1, late 90s, early 2000s. I didn't start watching it from the beginning, every episode on Showtime when it first aired. So yeah, I watched a couple seasons, box set DVDs, but I had it was like a whole few years of my life that were pretty much dedicated to SG-1. Like that was just my obsession. I loved it. I was trying to get people that I knew to watch it. I was looking up stuff about it. I was following it week to week, loved it. And that's culture. That's how culture takes place. But when you just binge watch something real quick and then you're on to the next thing, nothing has a moment to breathe in culture. It doesn't have a chance for culture to kind of breathe around it and to form around it and to develop around it. And I think part of the problem too is that a lot of these new stories, whether they be movies, television, whatever, just aren't of quality, right? They're not the kind of stories that they're not really telling a good hero's journey. There's the whole, move to go against that, even in the academic world. A lot of people are like, we need to overturn the hero's journey. Oh, it's so sexist. It's so, post-colonial or whatever. So there's that, and there's actually a big move too among a lot of Marxist theorists, whether they know they're Marxist theorists or not, to get away from the idea of stories about the individual. We need to have stories that encourage collectivism and a group and a community. Stop getting these stories about individuals and individualism, which is completely irrationally insane, because there is no community if you don't have individuals within that community accepting themselves as an individual with individual responsibility and agreeing to do their own individual heroism, in that community. You have no community without individuals, but, people are really trying to, so there's political motives behind this. And there's the fact that the stories themselves just aren't that great anymore. But I think technology is a big part of it too. It's the way we use technology. We don't allow things to have their cultural moment. And you can still use the technology. I remember when the internet first hit, I was a teenager in the 90s. And even before like American Online, dial-up internet, we had Prodigy. I think you could get Prodigy, CompuServe, and then eventually it just happened to where everybody had America Online. But dial-up internet back in the day. And yeah, we would come home from school and we couldn't wait to get online. But what did we do online? We went to like bulletin boards. Like I joined a Aerosmith fan club and talked about their late, Get a Grip album and stuff when I was in middle school. And, that kind of like we celebrated culture still. It wasn't to the point where everything's coming at you fast. The next series, the next series, the next movie, the next movie, the next movie. And I think people are feeling that. They're feeling the fact that culture, none of these things that are coming out are allowed to develop culture around them, probably because they just can't, because it's not a good story, and then also because the speed at which things are released and the technology and the way it's just moving on to the next one doesn't allow things to grow and have a cultural moment. You couldn't even imagine having a whole summer be about a single movie anymore. Not that, multiple movies were released back in the summers and stuff, but like Batman, it was a whole year of Batmania. It was great. I remember that in '89, now, even though a lot of people try to pretend that the Batman was so great, it was still here and gone, flash in the pan, just like every other movie is these days. And people are feeling that. And so when I say they're running to the streaming services or the movie theaters or whatever to gobble up and consume every new piece of content that comes out, as I said, it's because they're desperate for community. They want that community feeling, and the cultural, the technology isn't allowing culture to develop to give them that community. So that's why they're running and trying. And it's kind of sad because they don't realize it. They're like somebody abandoned in a ship at sea, and they're so thirsty, so they're drinking salt water. and the salt water just makes them thirsty, but they've got to keep drinking because they're so thirsty. It's like they don't get it. Like the more you go and recklessly consume, you're just making your problem worse. You're making it worse and worse and worse, the state of the world. If you'd stop gobbling up everything new, if you'd go back and celebrate things that were worthy of celebrating and sit with those for a while and just say no to Hollywood's constant barrage of stuff, you really have to change the way people operate with technology and culture to really fix this. And I don't see it happening, quite frankly, because people are too weak to do it. But if we're ever going to have culture again, if we're ever going to allow culture to really do its organic work, and when you don't have culture doing its organic work, what you have is technology being able to control you, whether that's big, whatever boogeyman you like to think about, which I think they're quite valid, government basically, but whether they're working through corporate, entities or whatever. I mean, Facebook, the metaverse is very real. That's subsumed culture. Instead of celebrating culture, celebrating your favorite music, movies, or whatever, you go online and you go, whether it's YouTube, Facebook, X, or whatever, you go to these places and you just get fed that steady IV of new garbage that's not doing anything for you. It's not nourishing your soul. It's not nourishing your mind, in terms of doing the cultural work of mythology. And even if it could, the rate at which it's released and the technology and the way it's just like keeping your attention span, squirrel, look over there, it wouldn't be allowed to. I remember growing up in the high school in the 90s. Like I said, I was really into film study, film analysis, classic films, even the filmmaking industry and whatnot. And I remember even in the 90s, I had my friends who was like, oh, I can't watch a black and white movie. Oh, that's so gross. I can't do that. And that's like 10 times 1,000 now. You take a young person now and get them to try to watch just a film that was made 10 years ago. And they're like, that's so old. Oh gosh, that's just, the effects are so old. They're not seeing it so old as in the styles have changed or whatever, but the effects, they'll talk a lot about that. Oh, those effects are so old, so what? Are you watching for story? Or are you watching for the latest technology? You can hear that in their, they've got such short attention spans. They need the technology to be right up to the line, up to date at every turn, that they are just, they're addicted to salt water and they're just going to keep drinking it until they die. That's, and it's frightening because our culture, culture's gone. And I just mean objective, the definition of culture. We don't have culture anymore and technology is replacing it. And that's terrifying because that really does make you the little zombie that every cyberpunk story has warned us about. It's here it comes. It's at the doorstep right now. And it's terrifying, I got some super chats here. Let me, I just wanted to get all that out in one go, but let me check these super chats. Thank you, Studio Super. Really appreciate that $9.99 super chat. Said, tech today removed experience. It made things too convenient. Say what you want about the theater, but there's an experience to leaving your house and going to see something. Now it all comes to you. That's really true. I love the theater experience. Now I hated the fact that, who's spamming the heck out of oh, that's not spam. Thought it was. I hated the fact that, people wouldn't have any kind of etiquette in the theater. And I still hate that. And I did stop seeing movies in the theater for a long time, but that's part of loss of culture too, right? People just had to be on their phones. Oh, I can't pay attention to a whole movie. That's 2 hours. You're asking me to stare at one big screen? No, I need to jump in and check this here and check this there and check this there, or talk to my friend, it's that loss of attention span. But the way the theater is designed to be, it is, you're supposed to go in there and feel like you've left the world. It's dark. You subsume yourself into that screen and that experience. And even if you're somebody who likes to the crowd to react along with you, as long as they're reacting to the film along with you, fine, whatever. It's that experience, but we don't have that anymore. And like you said, now it all comes to you. You're right, because when you're just sitting down yourself watching a movie, I mean, really ask yourself, how often do you just sit there and watch a movie beginning to end? And I'm not talking about maybe pausing for a bathroom break here or there. Even that's breaking it up. But how many times do you not pause it to check your messages real quick, or pause it to go do something else real quick? And you're going to get back to it, and it breaks up the experience. Even that in the viewing doesn't allow the films to do the work that they're supposed to do. Owen Lister, another super chat for $19.99. Thank you, sir, so much. So I was born in 1996 and grew up in the 2000s to now. I will say early 2000s were so different compared to now. I'd agree, absolutely. What I remembered from that era was extreme sports, skateboarding, SpongeBob, Lord of the Rings, and the prequels. Absolutely, absolutely, and like that's what I said. The it I had to kind of just arbitrarily pick the numbers and the designs for that thumbnail, but I think culture didn't really. We still had plenty of culture in the early aughts. I think it was like I said, 2007 with the invention of the iPhone that we had the beginning of the end. But we still had some good cultural moments, even up into like maybe the early teens. But you can see it dying all around you. You could really see it. Um, how many people even watch live TV anymore? How many people even have a cable service? I'm not saying you should because there's not hardly anything worthy of watching on it now anyway. But pretty much everybody, and I know there's some. I know Big Al loves his live TV, but most people just like I do. We just have either a streaming service, or you watch your DVDs on hard media. Like I get my DVDs and collections and whatnot, and the things I want to watch, and it's there was something to be said for a live transmission that even people in their own houses separately were still gathered around at the same moment and watching, as a nation or as a culture together, seeing those commercials and whatnot. That was a big thing. So yeah, appreciate those super chats and those thoughts. That's really good. Yeah, cable is mostly reality TV. Fizzo just said, I didn't know that. I don't even, like I said, I don't really watch anything like that anymore. And I just don't know. I don't see a way to fix it. I really don't. I know that people aren't strong enough to say no and to send the message that they need to send for Hollywood and the cultural creators to get it in gear. They're not strong enough to send that message. You're not going to stop the evolution of technology, but it would be nice if you could. Honestly, I'm not anti-technology. Believe me, as an introvert, goodness, I love the internet. As an introvert with social anxiety, the internet's my best friend because I can be alone as much as I want, but I can still come and have connection with people when I want to as well, which doesn't require me going to a party and being stuck there, right? I love, I like social media. Obviously, I like YouTube. I'm a YouTuber. So it's not the technology is objectively bad or anything. I love the new capabilities in video games and whatnot, but you don't need it, right? Sound Engraver and I were talking the other day. She's watching me play through KOTOR 2 because she hadn't seen the whole story yet and everything. And she brought up the point, which I totally agree, is like, you don't need to remake this. They were trying to remake KOTOR 1, so many years ago, and I'm so glad that fell through. I can't be more happy that fell through because you don't need a remake. It's perfect. Re-release it maybe, like restore the lost content to KOTOR 2 or something, fine. But you don't need to remake that. The graphics are just fine. You see the people, what you're not talking about, like I get it, you don't want to be playing 8-bit, characters for the rest of your life, even though there's a charm to that and retro games are great and stuff like that. But you just don't need, I've the Arkham games, I've said it before. Once you got into the next generation, the PS4 with Arkham Knight, the story suffered. The story was an issue, but also the graphics, like they were just ugly. They were really ugly. They were trying so hard to be realistic that there was just this sort of uncanny, gross valley with the faces. You can especially see it on the characters like Poison Ivy. You look at her design and scenes from Arkham Knight and compare that to Arkham Asylum, or even Arkham City. And it's gross. You tried to make it so technologically advanced and so realistic that you've taken away that removed level of fantasy. And it's just, we don't need everything remade. We don't need the top-notch, top-of-the-line, technology all the time. Studio Super, thank you for another super chat there. Said, I would also say another reason as to why there is no longer a cultural phenomenon is because marketing is so lackluster. Yeah, these days they release a trailer, a few TV spots, then the movie, and that's it. You're absolutely right. And I haven't really fully thought through this, so I don't know all of the reasons behind that. But you're right, marketing, like, even as recently as, like I said, Marvel's The Avengers in 2012, that whole summer was about that movie. I forget the exact month that it came out, but that whole year, people were just still buzzing about that. It was such a cool thing, and there was marketing everywhere. Now, maybe it's because there's too much marketing. like half the time the marketing comes out before the movie even comes out. I mean, that's been the case a lot, especially with the pandemic pushing the release dates back and stuff like that. But yeah, marketing doesn't know how to stay on something. They don't really know how to get people excited about things anymore because people don't have the attention span to stay excited about one thing anymore. They really don't. That was yesterday's flavor. Give me today's flavor. What's the next thing coming up? Let's see a couple comments. Whoa, I see the fan man has graced my stream with his presence. Good to see you, my friend. Saw Big Al in here too a couple times talking about black and white TVs and stuff that he liked. Fan man says, dude, I can't watch movies with my family anymore. They can't put the phones down at all. I, on the other hand, don't check my phone at all, especially when it's movies I want to watch. Absolutely. Like I want to stay in that cultural, or stay in that world that you enter into the movie. Now, I've got a very tiny bladder, so I probably have to pause it occasionally to use the restroom. But I'd have to do that in the theater anyway, run out and run back in and miss a few minutes. So I like the fact that I can pause and come back to that. But yeah, Sound Engraver and I, when we watch our shows, our movies and stuff like that, we don't even touch our phones. That's ridiculous. Why would we do that? Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, Logic's Finest, and Akira Kurosawa film would be called boring now, or too long, or attacked. Well, I feel that acutely in my constructing American heroes class that I teach. I would love to be able to show my students like Christopher Reeve Superman from 78. They would never ever be able to even receive the whole story because they couldn't handle sitting there and watching a movie so slow, so cheesy effects or whatever, because their brains can't do it. People's brains have lost the ability to focus on something, on one thing. And I know some people might have like actual conditions of ADHD or something like that, but even that I think is become really out of control in terms of the number of cases. And I'm no brain scientist or whatever, but I wouldn't be surprised if the number of people who have that condition is also attached to the way we treat technology and stuff today, and the way it kind of forms our brains and whatnot. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Spidey Rule said the average leftist would have a heart attack if they saw the humor of the 2000s. Oh my gosh. Even The Office. The Office could never be remade today. Wasn't it a story that they Netflix or wherever it's streaming on, they removed the Diversity Day episode because that's too shocking. I mean, it's humor. It's satire. It's ridiculous. Yeah, the hyper realism. Thank you, Bebop Bandicoot. Somebody else sees the Arkham Knight hyper realism. It's just gross. Yeah, I don't know what's up with that. Logic's Finest. It's not the technology; it's dumbing down the content, on which it has dumbed down the masses, who in turn want more dumbed down content. It's a loop of increasing ignorance. I think it's definitely the dumbed down content, like you said, but I think technology plays a big part of it too. Which is the biggest contributor? I don't know, but I think they're definitely both at play. Yeah, I saw the release. They re-released KOTOR 6-inch figures, but they were of the redesigns for the remake that never. Oh, gross! I didn't know about that. That's do not like that at all. Yeah, unless there are a lot of big company video games start looking the same, like they're trying to make it a movie. Meanwhile, a lot of indie games have a more appealing look. Yeah, I don't really play indie games, but I don't know many indie games. But yeah, you are right. They do all kind of look the same. I definitely see that. Yeah, big uppers and no extra large drink for Professor Geek. No. If I'm gonna watch a movie, especially Marvel movies killed me because even in the early teens and whatnot, when they were still worthy of worth watching, they were extra long. But then you knew you had to wait till the very end of the credits to get the credit scene. So when they first started doing that, it was fine. You could use the restroom in the credits and come back in. But then they started doing the mid credit scene, and then you didn't know if there'd be an end credit scene as well as a mid credit scene. So man. I remember by the end of like watching some of those movies, I'm just like rocking back and forth in the theater seat, like trying not to wet myself. It's that was hard. That was difficult. Fan Man said you need to take theater going more seriously. Fast for several hours before watching. Who am I kidding? There hasn't been a movie worth that sacrifice since Infinity War. Yeah, I know exactly. Like what's worth even seeing in the films. Although sometimes they bring back like classics and re-release them in the film sometimes, and it's never on a day that I can sync up my schedule with, unfortunately. But Another super chat here, Studio Super. I remember with Superman Returns, they released episodes of the animated series, the Reeve films, the video game. That marketing goes a long way, and it made me dig into the character and made me a fan. You know, you're absolutely right. It was when Batman '89 was released. Every single day on TV, Batman '66 was replaying reruns of that. Comic books everywhere. Now, part of that, and you say Superman Returns, and that's another good example because even with the problems of Superman Returns as a Superman story, that was still very much the heart of Superman and Brandon Routh's portrayal and whatnot. And so it wasn't all that, you know, even something as vastly different as Keaton's Batman to Adam West's Batman, the heart of Batman's still there. It's very different because you had, you know, absurdist theater, you know, surrealism theater in '66, and you had more of a dramatic gothic film in '89. So the trappings were different around it, but the heart of the character remained the same. And same thing for Superman Returns, like you're saying. So they could market, they could bring out Christopher Reeve's Superman, heck, George Reeves Superman, or whatever for all of that. But once you get them trying to remake the characters, like as soon as Man of Steel came out, there was no like trying to re-drum up interest in the Reeve films and whatnot. There was certainly no interest in trying to, you know, drum up old uh, interpretation of the Batman as soon as, you know, Affleck's Murder Man came out, because it's completely different characters. In fact, Warner Brothers even suppressed a lot of it. I won't mention his name because I don't know if he wants this out or whatever, but it's very, you could very easily know who I'm talking about. You know, I'm not really hiding it. But a guy who owns a lot of the rights to some of the old great photos and you know things from the old Superman Reeves films. He wrote a book, and it's a picture book, and it's a really, it's like a coffee table book, and it looks amazing. And he has not been able to get it published. Warner Bros. Will not allow the publication of it because they only want to publicize their current versions of what they're doing. So he had it available, or he had it finished. It was like ready to go. Had so many great images of the old Reeve years and the movies and so forth. It looks amazing. I don't have a copy myself, but he's shown pictures of it and whatnot. And they would not allow it to be out when they were doing their garbage Zack Snyder verse. Now, my understanding is they won't let it come out because they're doing their new gun crap. Whereas, like you said before, the characters were the characters. So yeah, interest in Batman '66 was helping the drum up of Batman '89. That kind of thing's not there anymore. Yeah, it's just Barbie, that garbage. Yeah. I see a time, 9:30. Now I'm probably going to cut it kind of short tonight, not do the whole full hour like I usually do on these streams, just because it is a Monday night. The schedule's a little different. I'm also kind of hungry. Need to eat something, but I'll check in with a few comments here. Anything else that we say here? I'll wrap things up. Murder Man, Francisco. Yeah, Murder Man. That's. I think Fan Man taught me that. Call him Batman Murder Man. That's what he did. Oh, but he had to learn. He learned that he couldn't be brutal and torture people or kill people. It was about him learning. Yeah. Oh, shove it. Bebop Bandicoot says, I really wanted Brandon Routh Superman to become a full saga with the Man of Steel sequel involving Metallo and others having Parasite, Silver Banshee, Brainiac, and Bizarro. You know, I really do too, especially when you read the novelization. The novelization, I forget the character's name, but the child, Jason, no, the child, I forget his. Anyway, in the novelization, that's not Superman's kid. Now that really does kind of like, there's no, you know, I've heard things that maybe they would have done in the sequel or whatever to let Superman and Lois get back together. I mean, you just utterly demolished the Superman Lois relationship. So that's a problem. But there, it did make me really curious about how they could save it and bring it back and do certain things, because Ralph's portrayal was just so glorious. I loved Ralph as Superman, and it boils my blood that the only other time he got to portray the character was in CW's garbage crossover universe things, which didn't even respect him there. You know, you got him on screen for like 2 minutes before he's replaced by, you know, not Lex Luthor. Again, love John Cryer, love his previous involvement in the Superman universe, but just the whole CW, everything they did, they had a really cool thing going for a little while, and then it just all went off the rails, and it's just no longer worth watching anymore. Yeah, someone who has to learn not to kill people. Spidey rules. This is great. Someone who has to learn not to kill people is a psychopath. Contrary to popular belief, Batman is not crazy. No, he's not. People have this deranged view of Batman. He should be insane. He should be so driven by his grief that they want the Punisher. Well, fine, go watch the Punisher then. Stop trying to turn Batman, a character who's never been that, into that. It drives me bananas. Fanman said, how would you feel about Ernest being recast and played by Larry the Cable Guy? No. Never. Can't recast Ernest. He's one of a kind. Still need to. Sound Graver's going to watch Ernest Saves Christmas with me again this year. She's agreed to that kind of being a regular thing. I don't think she'll watch Ernest Scared Stupid with any regularity, but I will. I think she's agreed to watch Ernest Goes to Jail at some point. I said that's the next one you really need to watch with me. That's quality. It's good stuff. Slav said, what are your favorite video games? I like, for me, gaming wise, it has to be a story. And that's just me. I know some people, like Sound Engraver herself, she likes playing games that are more challenged. She loves Donkey Kong Country and whatnot, which is totally fine. I'm not saying it's bad to that, but for me, I like story. So I'll put up with a game where the gameplay is kind of meh, as long as it's a good story to follow, or the graphics are kind of meh, or whatever. So I love the Kingdom Hearts games. They were great, solid stories, 1 and 2 anyway. I love Witcher 3, LA Noire. The Red Dead Redemption games were great. Most recent game that shocked me because it came out so recently, I didn't think it was going to be worth it all, was Guardians of the Galaxy. But that Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy game was actually really high quality. The story was great. Wasn't anything woke or garbagey in it. That was really good. There's some other great games. Witcher 2 was great too. I still need to finish Skyrim. I've gotten back into some of those ones that I've kind of missed in my day. But the Arkham games, the first 3 anyway, Arkham Origins is really great. I think that gets a bad rap, but that's a wonderful little game. Yeah, a lot of things like that. KOTOR, of course, both KOTORs. So, another super chat from Studio Super. Thank you, sir. Oh, yeah, Sound Graver bringing up Terra Enigma. Yeah, she's playing Terra Enigma right now when we're together on date nights and whatnot. And it's a pretty cool story. I like the following of it, I don't think I would, like, if I had free time, I would play an old 8-bit game like that. Not because I can't handle the graphics. I mean, the stories are, they're good to follow, but those stories don't engage me enough for me to follow on my own. Like, she's played through a lot of the Final Fantasies, the old original Final Fantasies, and whatnot. And it's enough to keep me interested and to enjoy experiencing it with her as she plays it. But there are a lot of holes in the stories too. There are a lot of things that are like, and then let's pretend that this happens and not develop that. And then let's go over here and do this and not really talk about that anymore. And then let's go do this now, And then, again, that was just the nature of video games at the time. They weren't trying to write, the Great American Novel or anything. So I'm not judging them, but I'm just saying I probably wouldn't pursue stories like that on my own playthroughs. But yeah, stories tantamount. What is the word I'm looking for? Paramount for me. Jared Warlock, how do we get more people to watch older media? Occasionally I know people that we can, or I'll see people that we can, or I have, my videos or whatever, they'll say, you got me into watching this and it's amazing. And that's wonderful. But I think they're so few and far between. I think so many people just couldn't stomach anything. So, that's older. I think that's why I say technology. I think we need to change the way we use technology so that people's brains can develop a better attention span, a better focus, a better desire to sit with the story for a while and think about it and actually explore it and really, analyze it before jumping to the next series that comes out, it's that's why I say culture has to return to kind of help that along. But it's a good question. Owen Lister for $9.99. Thank you, sir. Said a little off topic, but I recently finished Jamie Reyes' Blue Beetle comic, and it's more interesting than what I saw in the Blue Beetle movie ads. Yeah, I didn't care to watch the Blue Beetle movie ad in any way, shape, or form because the director came out and it was emphatically clear that this movie takes place in Henry Cavill's Superman's universe, even though James Gunn was saying maybe it doesn't or whatever. It's just like, no. Warner Brothers they've never learned their lesson. They're still just throwing crap against the wall and hoping that something sticks. And when something sticks, they run with it, but they don't even run with it all the way. They sort of run with it. They sort of keep Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman around, but not really, but cancel this over here. And then it's just like, what's going on now? So, I have no faith in James Gunn to fix any of that. Studio Super, with my comic, I plan to market it like a movie with a movie trailer. VAs to TV spots on a countdown and maybe a fan art contest. Yeah, that's great. Basically, make it feel like something people can afford to miss. Yeah, a lot of the comic creators who use like crowdfunding campaigns or whatever. That's good marketing, right? It's getting people ready for the event, and they build up to it if they do it well. Some people don't, but if you do it well, the only problem with the crowdfunding things is that when they're continuing stories, you have to wait forever for the next installment of the story for even the campaign to come out, and it's like comics didn't work that publishing wise. They'd come out once a month and you could keep following the story. So I think that needs to be as that develops, that evolves, that needs to get a little more get faster with the continuing stories to come out at regular intervals, but all right, guys, I'm probably gonna have to wrap this up here because I am hungry. I also coincidentally have to pee. Shocker, right? But let me see. Any last words here, last comments here? Yeah, Secret of Mana. That wasn't really crazy about that. Chrono Trigger was awesome. Really loved Chrono. Santa Graver and I were talking the other day about how is it that they have never done anything more with Chrono Trigger? Like do a manga or do a cartoon series or something, I think they re-released the game once and they had that little trailer thing, but like that's it. That was such a cool characters and cool story. Never played Jack and Dexter Bandicoot. Heard good things about it. I should check that out. Or the Ratchet and Clank. Yeah. There was that little period of during like the PS1 era where I just wasn't playing video games. I didn't really get back into video games until Kingdom Hearts with PS2. So that's why I missed a lot of the stuff from like Xbox, that time period and whatnot. Studio Super. I think I saw Ed Star here and Slav. Just want to call those out. Good to see you guys. I had Ed Star's comment up here, but the chat moved away. But I see you there. Good to see you there. Oh, there he says, hey, I hear you, Prof. It's been a long Monday. Oh, yeah, Mondays. Studio Super says, which is why with my comic, I'm doing volumes rather than issues. Oh, that's good. Volumes. Yeah, that helps. A complete story and room to breathe till the sequel. Yeah, that's so important, too, when you're a writer, to be able to write a good, solid arc, even if it's not the whole movie. Like a chapter should give you some sense of completion. Even if it's, clearly the story isn't finished yet, you're going to move on. You should have some sort of completed arc, whether it's an issue or a chapter or, volumes like you're saying. So that's really great. That's a good good tactic to take. All right. AL watching her husband play Chrono Trigger. Yeah, it was a good story. All right, folks, I'm going to call it there. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it. I will cut out some bits of the last stream's video and maybe this stream video eventually. Definitely coming back Friday to finish up the Dawn of the Jedi book study. And then the next office hour stream might be next Monday again. It won't be Saturday, but it'll be somewhere abouts there. But it's just always a good time to hang out with you guys. I appreciate you coming by and listening and all the fun we're having there. So we'll do it again. And until next time, keep enjoying and digging deeper into the true blue hero stories you love. And I would sign off, except my StreamYard didn't load up. There, ruined my ending. Okay. Blah, 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 what I said. Thanks for watching.